The cold November morning air cut through Danny's worn jacket like a knife. He pulled his thin coat tighter around his shoulders as he walked along the fence near Chicago's busy airport. 3 months ago, he never imagined he would be here, searching through trash cans for empty bottles and cans to sell. Danny was 52 years old and had spent 20 years fixing planes in the Air Force. His hands were rough and scarred from years of working with metal and engines. He knew every bolt, every wire, and every part that made those big machines fly safely through the sky. But that felt like a lifetime ago now. Life had hit Danny hard in the past year. His wife got very sick with cancer, and the hospital bills kept coming. They used all their savings, then sold their car, and finally lost their house when Danny couldn't work anymore because he was taking care of his wife. When she passed away 6 months ago, Danny felt like his world had ended. He tried to go back to work, but the sadness was too heavy. Some days he couldn't even get out of bed. His boss at the aircraft repair shop was understanding at first, but after Danny missed too many days, they had to let him go. Without a job and with no family left, Danny ended up on the streets. Now, he spent his days looking for ways to survive. The area near the airport wasn't the best place to find food or shelter, but Danny felt comfortable here. The sound of planes taking off and landing reminded him of better times when he had purpose and pride in his work. On this particular morning, Danny was walking near the private jet area of the airport. Rich people kept their expensive planes here, away from the regular passenger flights. He wasn't supposed to be in this area, but security was usually light in the early morning hours. As he walked along the fence, Danny heard a sound that made him stop in his tracks. It was the whining noise of a jet engine that wasn't running right. His trained ear picked up the problem immediately. Something was wrong with the fuel system. Danny looked through the fence and saw a beautiful white private jet sitting on the concrete. It was one of the nicest planes he had ever seen, probably worth more money than most people see in their entire lives. Several men in clean uniforms were standing around the plane, looking worried and confused. One man stood out from the group. He was wearing an expensive dark suit and kept looking at his watch. Even from a distance, Danny could tell this man was important. The way he carried himself, the way the other people seemed nervous around him. This was someone with serious money and power. The man in the suit was pacing back and forth, making phone calls. Danny could see the frustration on his face growing with each passing minute. Whatever meeting or business this man needed to get to, it was clearly very important. The mechanics working on the plane looked lost. They had opened up parts of the engine and were looking at manuals, but Danny could tell they didn't understand what they were seeing. One of them was on his phone, probably calling for help or trying to order parts. Danny moved closer to the fence, staying in the shadows where no one would notice him. His curiosity got the better of him. After 20 years of fixing planes, it was hard to walk away from a problem he knew he could solve. The jet was a Gulfstream, one of the most advanced private planes in the world. Danny had worked on similar models during his last few years in the Air Force. The fuel injection system on these planes was complicated, but Danny knew it like the back of his hand. From where he stood, Danny could hear bits of conversation between the mechanics. They were talking about fuel pressure problems and electronic sensors. One of them mentioned needing to order special parts from the manufacturer. Another said it could take hours or even days to get the right components. The man in the expensive suit overheard this and became even more upset. He started making more phone calls, his voice getting louder with each conversation. Danny couldn't hear exactly what he was saying, but the man's body language told the whole story. This delay was costing him something big. Danny watched for another 10 minutes as the mechanics continued to struggle with the problem. They tried different things, but nothing worked. The engine still made that awful whining sound whenever they tried to start it. Something inside Danny started to stir. It was the same feeling he used to get in the Air Force when his team faced a difficult repair job. The pride of being able to fix something that others couldn't. The satisfaction of getting a broken machine running again. These feelings had been buried under months of sadness and despair, but they were still there. Danny knew exactly what was wrong with that plane. More importantly, he knew how to fix it without waiting for expensive parts to arrive. It was a technique he had learned during his military service, a field repair that could get the plane running safely until proper maintenance could be done later. But who would listen to a homeless man? Danny looked down at his dirty clothes and felt the stubble on his unshaven face. He probably smelled bad too, after sleeping under a bridge the night before. These rich people and professional mechanics wouldn't want anything to do with someone like him. Still, Danny couldn't walk away. Every instinct he had as a mechanic was screaming at him to help. He had spent his whole adult life keeping planes safe in the sky. Even though his own life had fallen apart, he couldn't ignore his responsibility to help when he knew lives might be at risk. The man in the suit made another phone call, and this time, Danny could hear some of what he said. There was a board meeting in New York that could determine the future of his company. Millions of dollars were hanging in the balance, and every minute of delay was making things worse. Danny took a deep breath and started walking toward the gate in the fence. His heart was beating fast and his hands were shaking a little. He hadn't talked to professional people in months. He wasn't sure he even remembered how to explain technical problems in a way that would make sense to others. But as he got closer, to the group of people around the plane, Danny felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. For the first time in months, he had a chance to be useful again, to use the skills that had defined his life for so many years. The security guard at the gate noticed Danny approaching and started to wave him away. Danny knew he only had a few seconds before he would be asked to leave. He had to make this count. He cleared his throat and called out in the strongest voice he could manage, hoping someone would give him just one chance to help. The security guard held up his hand to stop Danny from coming any closer. "Hey, you can't be here," the guard said firmly. "This is a restricted area." Danny's heart sank. He had expected this would happen, but it still hurt. He looked past the guard at the group of people standing around the broken jet. The man in the expensive suit was still on his phone, getting more frustrated by the minute. "I know what's wrong with that plane," Danny said quietly to the security guard. "I used to fix jets in the Air Force for 20 years. The guard looked Danny up and down, taking in his dirty clothes and worn-out shoes. "Sure you did, buddy. Now move along before I have to call for backup." But Danny's words carried across the concrete. One of the mechanics heard him and looked over. The mechanic had been working on the plane for over an hour and was running out of ideas. He walked toward the fence where Danny stood. "What did you say about the plane?" the mechanic asked. Danny felt a small spark of hope. "The engine is making a whining sound when you try to start it, right? And the fuel pressure readings are all wrong?" The mechanic's eyes widened with surprise. "How did you know that? We haven't even announced what the problem is." "Because I've heard that sound 1,000 times before," Danny replied. "It's the fuel injector system. One of the electronic sensors is giving bad readings to the computer, so the engine thinks it's getting too much fuel when it's actually not getting enough." The mechanic turned and called to his team. "Hey, come listen to this guy. He might know something." 2 other mechanics walked over, along with the man in the expensive suit. Up close, Danny could see that this was clearly someone very important. His suit probably cost more than Danny used to make in a month. His watch looked like it could pay rent on an apartment for a year. "What's going on here?" the wealthy man asked impatiently. "We don't have time for delays." The first mechanic pointed to Danny. "This man says he knows what's wrong with your plane, Mr. Johnson." Mr. Johnson looked at Danny with obvious doubt. Here was a homeless man with dirty clothes trying to tell professional mechanics how to fix a multi-million-dollar jet. It seemed impossible. "Look, I appreciate the input," Mr. Johnson said, "but we have certified technicians working on this. We don't need—" "The fuel injector in cylinder 3 is getting false readings," Danny interrupted. "The sensor thinks the mixture is too rich, so it's cutting back on fuel delivery. But the sensor itself is bad. The engine is actually running too lean, which is why you're getting that high-pitched whine." The mechanics looked at each other with surprise. Danny had just described exactly what they were seeing in their diagnostic equipment, but he had done it without even looking at their computers. "How could you possibly know that?" one of the mechanics asked. "Because I spent 8 years working on Gulfstream engines in the Air Force," Danny explained. "This is a common problem on these models when they get some age on them. The environmental sensor starts giving bad readings, especially in cold weather like today. Mr. Johnson checked his watch again. Even if you're right, we still need to order the part. My technicians already told me it will take hours to get here. Danny shook his head. You don't need a new part, not right away anyway. There's a temporary fix that will get you safely to wherever you need to go. I learned it from an old sergeant who had been fixing planes since before I was born. The head mechanic crossed his arms. What kind of temporary fix? You bypass the bad sensor and run the fuel mixture manually for this flight, Danny explained. It's perfectly safe as long as the pilot knows what's happening. The engine will run normally and you can replace the sensor properly when you get to your destination. The mechanics whispered among themselves. They had never heard of this technique, but what Danny was saying made sense. The problem was exactly as he had described. Mr. Johnson was getting desperate. His phone had been ringing nonstop with calls from his business partners in New York. How long would this temporary fix take? He asked. About 30 minutes if you have the right tools, Danny answered. And you know how to do this? I've done it dozens of times. It's not something they teach in regular mechanic school, but it's standard procedure in military field operations. Mr. Johnson looked at his head mechanic. What do you think? The mechanic was torn. On one hand, letting a homeless stranger work on a $20 million airplane seemed crazy. On the other hand, they were out of options, and this man clearly knew what he was talking about. The diagnostic readings match exactly what he's describing, the mechanic admitted. And we're not making any progress with our current approach. Mr. Johnson made a decision. Fine, let him try, but you watch everything he does. The security guard unlocked the gate and let Danny through. For the first time in months, Danny felt truly alive. His hands stopped shaking, and his mind became clear and focused. This was what he was born to do. Danny walked up to the jet and ran his hands along the engine housing. He could feel the vibrations that told him exactly where the problem was, located. I'll need a few basic tools, he said to the mechanics. Nothing fancy, just a wrench set and a multimeter. The mechanics brought him a toolbox. Danny selected the tools he needed and got to work. First, he opened up the access panel to the fuel system. His movements were quick and confident, like he had done this repair just yesterday instead of months ago. See this sensor here? Danny pointed to a small electronic device. This is what's giving you the false readings. We're going to disconnect it temporarily and set the fuel mixture manually. He carefully removed some wires and connected them to different terminals. Then he adjusted several small screws on the fuel control unit. His hands moved with the precision of someone who had performed this task many times before. The mechanics watched carefully, taking notes on what Danny was doing. They were amazed at how smoothly he worked. Most of them had been fixing planes for years, but they had never seen this particular repair technique. Now we need to calibrate the manual settings, Danny explained as he worked. Too much fuel and the engine runs rough. Too little and it doesn't produce enough power. The trick is finding the sweet spot. Danny made several small adjustments, then had the pilot start the engine. Instead of the high-pitched whine they had been hearing all morning, the engine purred smoothly. The sound was perfect. That's incredible, one of the mechanics said. How did you learn to do that? Danny smiled for the first time in weeks. My old sergeant used to say that sometimes the book doesn't have all the answers. You have to learn to listen to what the machine is telling you. He ran through several more tests to make sure everything was working properly. The engine responded perfectly to all the controls. The fuel pressure readings were now normal, and all the warning lights had gone off. The engine will run fine now, Danny told Mr. Johnson. Just make sure your pilot knows that the fuel mixture is set manually for this flight. When you land, have your regular mechanic install a new environmental sensor, and everything will be back to normal. Mr. Johnson stared at the homeless man, who had just solved a problem that had stumped his expensive maintenance team. The jet was running perfectly, and they could finally get to New York. Danny started to pack up the tools and hand them back to the mechanics. His job was done, and he expected to be asked to leave now that the emergency was over. But as he turned to walk away, Mr. Johnson called out to him, "Wait a minute. What do I owe you for this?" Danny stopped and turned around. He thought about his empty stomach, and the cold bridge where he would sleep tonight. He thought about the few dollars he might make selling bottles and cans. But then he looked at the relief on everyone's faces and felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. The satisfaction of helping someone in need. "You don't owe me anything," Danny said quietly. "I'm just glad I could help." The wealthy businessman looked shocked. In his world, everything had a price. People didn't do things for free, especially not when those things were worth thousands of dollars and saved time and money. "Come on," Mr. Johnson insisted. "You just saved me from missing the most important meeting of my career. At least let me give you something." Danny shook his head again. "Really, it's okay. You just get to your meeting safely. Make sure that engine gets properly fixed when you land." As Danny started walking back toward the gate, he felt better than he had in months. For 30 minutes, he had been useful again. He had solved a problem and helped people. It reminded him of who he used to be before life knocked him down. Mr. Johnson stood there watching Danny walk away, completely puzzled by what had just happened. In his 40 years of business, no one had ever turned down money for helping him. Everyone always wanted something in return. But this homeless man had just saved his most important business deal and was asking for nothing. "Hold on," Mr. Johnson called out again, his voice louder this time. "I need to know your name at least." Danny stopped walking but didn't turn around right away. He wasn't used to rich people wanting to know anything about him. Most people like Mr. Johnson looked right through homeless folks like they didn't exist. "It's Danny," he said simply, still facing away from the group. "Danny what? What's your full name?" Danny slowly turned around. He could see genuine curiosity in Mr. Johnson's eyes, not the usual look of disgust or fear that most people gave him. "Danny Mitchell." Mr. Johnson walked closer to him. "Well, Danny Mitchell, I've never met anyone like you. You just solved a problem that my team of experts couldn't figure out. You saved me from losing the biggest deal of my life. And you're walking away like it's nothing." Danny shrugged his shoulders. "We all need help sometimes. I just happened to know how to fix your problem. But you're not just walking away," Mr. Johnson continued. "You're going back to where exactly? Where do you live?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Danny felt embarrassed about his situation, but he had learned that lying didn't help anything. "I don't really have a home right now. I sleep wherever I can find a safe spot." The mechanics who had been listening to this conversation looked uncomfortable. They had been so focused on the technical problem that they hadn't really thought about Danny's personal situation. Now they were seeing him as a real person instead of just a helpful stranger. Mr. Johnson felt something stir inside his chest. He had grown up poor himself before building his business empire. He remembered what it was like to worry about where his next meal would come from. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten those feelings. Success had made him comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. "How did you end up on the streets?" Mr. Johnson asked gently. Danny took a deep breath. He didn't usually talk about his story, but something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was because he had just felt useful again, or maybe it was because Mr. Johnson was asking with genuine care instead of just curiosity. "I was in the Air Force for 20 years, Danny began. "Worked on jets just like this one. When I got out, I found a good job at an aircraft repair shop here in Chicago. Had a nice house, a wonderful wife, life was good." He paused, looking up at the gray November sky. "Then my wife got cancer. The doctors tried everything, but the treatments were expensive. Insurance covered some of it, but not enough. We used up all our savings, then borrowed against the house." Mr. Johnson listened without interrupting. He could hear the pain in Danny's voice. "She fought for 2 years, Danny continued. 2 long, hard years. I took time off work to take care of her, to drive her to treatments, to be there when she was scared. My boss was understanding at first, but eventually, they had to replace me. I couldn't blame them. They had a business to run." Danny's voice got quieter. "When she died 6 months ago, I lost everything. The medical bills kept coming even after she was gone. I couldn't pay the mortgage without a job. Lost the house, lost the car, lost everything that reminded me of our life together." He looked down at his worn-out shoes. I tried to go back to work, but the sadness was too heavy. Some days I couldn't even get out of bed. Eventually, I ended up here, sleeping under bridges and looking for food wherever I could find it. The group of people around the jet stood in silence. Even the mechanics, who barely knew Danny, felt moved by his story. Here was a man who had served his country, worked hard his whole life, and lost everything through no real fault of his own. Mr. Johnson felt a lump forming in his throat. "Danny, I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine what that must have been like." "Thank you," Danny said simply. "But that's life, you know. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. I'm not the first person to lose everything, and I won't be the last." Mr. Johnson was amazed by Danny's attitude. Despite everything he had been through, there was no bitterness in his voice, no anger at the world or blame for others, just acceptance and a quiet dignity that impressed the wealthy businessman more than any business deal ever had. "You know what I don't understand?" Mr. Johnson said. "After everything you've been through, after losing your wife and your home and your job, you still helped a complete stranger today. You could have walked away and left us to figure it out ourselves. Why did you stop to help?" Danny thought about the question for a moment. "Because that's who I am, I guess. My wife used to say that we show our true character not when things are going well, but when everything is falling apart. She said that even when we have nothing left to give, we can still choose to be kind." He looked at the beautiful jet that was now running perfectly. "Besides, I know what it's like to need help. I've been getting small kindnesses from people for months now. A sandwich here, a few dollars there, a warm place to sit for a few minutes. People helping me even though they don't know me and I can't pay them back." Danny's eyes met Mr. Johnson's. "Today I finally had a chance to be the one helping instead of the one needing help. That felt good. It reminded me that I'm still worth something even if I don't have money or a house or fancy clothes." Mr. Johnson felt something changing inside him. He had spent so many years focused on making money and building his business that he had forgotten what it felt like to help someone, just because it was the right thing to do. Looking at Danny, he saw something he had lost along the way: the simple satisfaction of being useful to another human being. "Danny," Mr. Johnson said slowly, "what if I told you that you could help people again? What if you could go back to doing what you're obviously great at?" "What do you mean?" Danny asked, confused. "I mean, what if you could fix planes again? What if you could have a job and a place to live and a chance to get back on your feet?" Danny laughed, but not in a mean way. "That's a nice thought, but who's going to hire a homeless guy? I don't even have clean clothes for a job interview. I haven't worked in months, my references are all old. No one wants to take a chance on someone like me." Mr. Johnson smiled for the first time that morning. "I do." The words hung in the air, between them. Danny stared at the wealthy businessman, trying to understand what he had just heard. "What?" Danny whispered. "I said I do. I want to take a chance on you." Mr. Johnson's voice grew stronger and more confident. "I own 3 aircraft maintenance facilities, 2 here in Chicago and 1 in New York. We're always looking for skilled mechanics, especially ones with military experience." He gestured toward the jet. "I just watched you solve a problem that stumped my best technicians. More than that, I watched you do it without asking for anything in return. That tells me everything. I need to know about your skills and your character." Danny felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. "You're joking, right?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Mr. Johnson replied. "Danny, I need to get to New York for this meeting. It's going to determine the future of my company, but I want you to come with me." "Come with you? On your private jet?" "Yes. We can talk more on the flight. When we land, I'll set you up with temporary housing and get you started at our Long Island facility. You can begin working immediately." Danny's head was spinning. An hour ago, he had been digging through trash cans looking for bottles to sell. Now a billionaire was offering him a job and asking him to fly to New York on a private jet. "I don't understand," Danny said. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Mr. Johnson put his hand on Danny's shoulder. "Because 30 minutes ago you showed me something I had forgotten existed. You showed me what it looks like when someone helps another person just because it's the right thing to do. No strings attached, no expecting anything in return. He looked Danny straight in the eyes. In my business, everyone wants something. Every favor comes with a price. Every relationship is about what people can do for each other. But you fixed my plane and asked for nothing. That kind of character is rarer than any skill or talent. Danny felt tears starting to form in his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time someone had said something so kind about him. Plus, Mr. Johnson continued with a smile, you clearly know what you're doing with aircraft engines. I'd be crazy not to hire someone with your abilities. The mechanics who had been watching this conversation unfold were amazed. They had never seen their boss offer someone a job on the spot like this, especially not someone he had just met. Danny looked around at all the faces staring at him. He felt like he was in a dream that he might wake up from at any moment. But the cold November air on his face and the sound of the jet engine running smoothly told him this was real. For the first time in months, Danny felt something he had thought was gone forever: hope. Danny stood there in shock, trying to process what Mr. Johnson had just offered him. A job. A real job doing what he loved most in the world. And not just any job. A chance to work for one of the most successful businessmen in the country. Don't know what to say, Danny whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. Say yes, Mr. Johnson replied with a warm smile. Say you'll take a chance on a new beginning. Danny looked down at his dirty clothes and worn-out shoes. But look at me. I can't get on your fancy plane looking like this. I smell bad. I haven't had a real shower in weeks. Your other passengers will be disgusted. Mr. Johnson laughed, but it was a kind laugh. Danny, you're the only passenger. It's just going to be you, me, and the crew. And I happen to have some extra clothes in my travel bag that should fit you well enough. The head mechanic stepped forward. Sir, if you don't mind me saying, this is incredible. I've been working on planes for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone diagnose a problem that quickly or fix it with such a creative solution. The other mechanics nodded in agreement. They were still amazed by what they had witnessed. Danny had made their expensive diagnostic equipment look like toys with his simple hands-on approach. That's exactly why I want him on my team, Mr. Johnson said. Skills like that can't be taught in school. They come from years of real experience and natural talent. Danny felt overwhelmed by all the positive attention. For months, people had either ignored him or looked at him with disgust. Now these successful professionals were praising his abilities and treating him with respect. What about my background check? Danny asked. Don't you need to verify my military service and work history? We'll handle all the paperwork later, Mr. Johnson assured him. Right now I need to get to New York and I want you with me. We can sort out the details once we're there. Mr. Johnson turned to his head mechanic. Call ahead to the Long Island facility. Tell them to prepare temporary housing for a new senior mechanic. Also have someone pick up work clothes, boots, and basic necessities. Size? He looked at Danny. What size do you wear? Danny told him his sizes, still hardly believing this was really happening. The mechanic made notes and started making phone calls to arrange everything. Come on, Mr. Johnson said to Danny. Let's get you cleaned up and ready for the flight. They walked toward the jet together. Danny had worked on planes like this in the military, but he had never actually ridden in one as a passenger. The inside was even more beautiful than he had imagined. Leather seats, polished wood panels, and carpet so thick his feet sank into. And Mr. Johnson showed Danny to a small bathroom at the back of the plane. There's soap, shampoo, and clean towels in there. Take your time, I'll find you some fresh clothes. Danny looked at himself in the mirror and was shocked by what he saw. His hair was long and messy. His face was covered with scraggly beard, and his skin looked gray from months of living on the streets. He barely recognized himself. The hot water felt like heaven against his skin. Danny couldn't remember the last time he had taken a real shower with unlimited hot water and good soap. He washed his hair twice and scrubbed away months of dirt and despair. When he came out of the bathroom, he found clean clothes laid out on one of the seats. A nice button-down shirt, dress pants, and even new socks and underwear. Everything fit perfectly. Danny looked at himself in the plane's mirror and saw a completely different person. Clean, well-dressed, and dignified. For the first time in months, he looked like the professional mechanic he used to be. Mr. Johnson smiled when he saw the transformation. Much better. Now you look like the expert aircraft technician you are. The pilot announced they were ready for takeoff. Danny buckled himself into one of the comfortable leather seats and watched through the window as Chicago got smaller below them. He was leaving behind the cold bridges and empty streets where he had spent the worst months of his life. During the flight, Mr. Johnson told Danny more about his business. He owned Johnson Industries, which included several aircraft maintenance companies, a small airline, and other aviation-related businesses. The company employed over 2,000 people across the country. I started with nothing, Mr. Johnson explained. My father worked in a factory and my mother cleaned offices at night. I grew up poor, but my parents taught me the value of hard work and treating people right. Danny listened carefully as Mr. Johnson talked about building his business from a single small repair shop into a major company. I've been successful, but somewhere along the way I forgot what it was like to struggle. Today you reminded me of something important. What's that? Danny asked. That success isn't just about making money. It's about using your good fortune to help other people when you can. My parents always helped their neighbors, even when they didn't have much themselves. I got so caught up in business deals and profit margins that I forgot their example. Mr. Johnson looked out the window at the clouds below. When I saw you fix my plane and refuse to take any payment, it made me remember who I used to be before I became wealthy. It made me want to be that person again. Danny felt honored to be part of this moment in Mr. Johnson's life. Your parents sound like good people. They were. They both passed away a few years ago, but I think they would be proud of what we're doing today. They always said that when God blesses you, you should use those blessings to bless others. When they landed in New York, a car was waiting to take them to Mr. Johnson's Long Island facility. Danny had never seen such a large aircraft maintenance operation. There were dozens of planes in various stages of repair, and hundreds of workers in clean uniforms doing their jobs with obvious skill and pride. The facility manager, a woman named Patricia, met them at the entrance. Mr. Johnson had called ahead to explain the situation. Patricia had been skeptical about hiring someone without going through normal procedures, but she trusted her boss's judgment. Danny, this is Patricia. She runs our operations here and is one of the best managers in the business. Patricia, this is Danny Mitchell, our new senior mechanic. Patricia shook Danny's hand firmly. Welcome to the team, Danny. Mr. Johnson told me about what happened this morning. I'm impressed. She showed Danny around the facility, explaining their procedures and safety protocols. Danny felt more at home here than he had anywhere in months. The familiar smells of aviation fuel and metal, the sounds of tools and engines, the sight of skilled workers doing jobs they took pride in. It all felt like coming home. We've arranged temporary housing for you in our company apartments, Patricia explained. It's nothing fancy, but it's clean and comfortable. You'll have your own place until you get back on your feet permanently. The apartment was small but perfect. A bed with clean sheets, a kitchen with a full refrigerator, and best, of all, a bathroom with unlimited hot water. Danny sat on the bed and almost cried from gratitude. Over the next few days, Danny threw himself into his new job with enthusiasm he hadn't felt in years. His skills were even better than Mr. Johnson had hoped. Danny's military experience and creative problem-solving abilities impressed everyone he worked with. Within a week, Danny had solved 3 major repair problems that had been puzzling the regular mechanics. His field repair techniques, learned during his Air Force service, saved the company thousands of dollars in downtime and parts costs. This guy is amazing, Patricia told Mr. Johnson during their weekly meeting. The other mechanics are already coming to him for advice on difficult problems. He has a natural gift for understanding how these machines work. But Danny's impact went beyond just technical skills. His humble attitude and willingness to help anyone who asked made him popular with the entire staff. Despite his expertise, he never acted like he was better than anyone else. Danny also started volunteering at a local shelter for veterans on his days off. He knew what it was like to be homeless and hopeless, and he wanted to help others who were going through similar struggles. There are a lot of skilled people living on the streets, Danny told Mr. Johnson during one of their regular check-in meetings. People who just need someone to give them a chance. This gave Mr. Johnson an idea. What if we created a program to help homeless veterans find jobs in aviation? There must be others out there with skills like yours who just need an opportunity. Danny's eyes lit up. That would be incredible. I know there are guys living under bridges who used to fix helicopters in Vietnam or work on cargo planes in Iraq. They have valuable skills, but no one will hire them because of how they look or where they're living. Over the next few months, Danny and Mr. Johnson worked together to develop a program they called Second Chance Aviation. The program would identify homeless veterans with aircraft maintenance experience and help them get back into the workforce.